like when people get to the point of understanding, oh, community, I need you as much as you need me. Ubuntu. I am because you are, literally. Like, that is the end all be all. So once we get to that point, all the arguments don't matter.
Welcome back to another episode of Keeping It a Bean. Keeping It a Bean is where we bring together commentary, conversation, all over a cup of coffee. If you are new here, well, sometimes I like to drink tea. So, and sometimes we have coffee. So we are in alignment today. If you're new here, my name is Marquise Davon, This American Negro. Just don't ever call me Mark. Everybody knows. If you are not new here, hello to niggas and niggas only. You already know what the vibes are. It is so good to see you. If you want to support this here podcast, you can do so in two ways. The first way is non-monetarily, economic anxiety. There's a lot going on in the world. And so if you can, just word of mouth is still the most powerful thing you can do to support this here podcast. And so tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend about the show. When you see the clips go up on Instagram or YouTube or Twitter, make sure to share those clips. Make sure that you use the hashtag KIAB or Keeping It a Bean as well to support. So this way I can keep up with the conversation and anything you're talking around. Y'all have been going off in terms of the episodes as well. The most recent one around Kamala Harris and will black men support her has been top of the conversation. So shout out to Current Events. But also thank you, Sterling, for having that conversation. Also, if you want to see me on another podcast, you can also go to For the Record with Dawn as well. And so it was an awesome conversation. Definitely one that pushed me a little bit more than I was expecting. So definitely had to working with different points of views, but also being able to flesh out my ideas and really solidify my own politic. I haven't been able to have that kind of intellectual debate in a while. So it was nice to really just be like, oh, nah, this is what I believe in, and y'all ain't gonna play in my face, not today. And so really, really good conversation with Dom Fowler. So please enter into that space as well. Make sure to drop the link below. You can also support this guy here monetarily by going to patreon.com/Marquise Davon. That's MarquiseDavon. You can support me for as little as $2 a month, which is $24 a year. Some of y'all ain't using that Planet Fitness, John. Y'all not. So you might as well just come over here and support this black business. But also, I'm much cheaper than Netflix. You can get drops to episodes very early. Those are going to be the ones that are unedited and straight to the point. So you're not going to see all the, here's the transition here, and here's this opening, and here's this. You're just getting what you're going to get. All right? So if you want to go to Patreon for those exclusive drops, that is the place to do it. Also, don't forget to support the work that I'm doing with the Congressional Black Caucus and the Rolling Sea Action Fund as well in terms of the misinformation and disinformation campaign. So continue to share that post. It's super, super important during this election year that we are staying as informed as possible because black folks are being targeted with disinformation at the highest rates right now. So tell your aunties and your grandmoms, stop looking on Facebook when those messages come around. Make sure that you're following reputable sources as well. Other than that, just continue to support, continue to share, continue to engage. That really helps podcasters out here. That's enough of me paying the bills. So we here. If you are watching on YouTube, this means you are seeing two lovely faces here on the camera as well. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell as well. But I'm always here with a lovely guest. And I am so excited to hop in this conversation with Darrien. Darrien is an advocate. Darrien is a social impact strategist. Darrien is a thinker. Darrien is a community activist as well. And I'm so, so excited to have you in on this conversation today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to keep it a bean, okay?
You already know what it is, okay?
Yes. Thank you. I'm definitely excited to be here today. Shout out to you, Marquise, the entire podcast, Rec Philly as well, and just the work that you're doing. When I first learned about your story and your podcast, I was really inspired. Like, okay, this is good. Create a space.
Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Nah, truly. And I got to learn a little bit more about you from I'm bugging Ryan from As I Plant This Seed.
Ryan
so he was like, yo, Keish, you got to get Darrien on. Like, this is the person you really going to want to talk to. Y'all really align, blah, 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 blah. And so just to hear the way that he talks about you is like so important because he's so tapped into the community. And then when I saw your name, Community Curator. Stop playing with it.
Yep. Yeah, I just want to shout out Ryan Harris. As I Plant This Seed, if y'all are not familiar with his work or haven't watched the episode yet, you need to go ahead and do so because you need to get behind him and getting behind all of our organizations and just our leaders that's really doing the work in our community.
And I'm excited for them to get to know you and the work that you are also doing.
Thank you.
But before we get fully into that conversation, I like to give a little icebreaker.
Okay.
A little something. So this is the Keeping It a Bean segment. This part where you keep it a being, keep it 100,
Okay.
your most authentic opinion on whatever is vexing your spirit or you just want to get off your chest. It can be pop culture, it can be politics, it can be personal, what you watching, what you listening to, whatever the case may be. So what do you want to keep it a being about today? She said, I have things.
I have a lot of things. Keep it a being. I love Black people. Okay. That's the tweet. Like, that's
it.
The tweet.
That's the tweet.
And I need my Black to be with a capital B. Okay.
Every single time.
That's the subtweet. That's the one right next to it under the thread. And if you're following us, I need you to get in line with Black people. But also understand that all skin folk ain't kinfolk either.
Ooh, and learning that the hard way.
So I'm here to keep it a being.
No, and I'm so glad because honestly, yes, y'all already know what it is. Please capitalize that being Black. I love my Black people as well. Yes. Honestly and truly, the good, the bad, the ugly, and just knowing that there's still space for us to continue to grow. So I think it's not only just keeping it to being about loving Black people, but I always say like my definition of love is like accountability meets affirmation.
Yes.
And how do we bring all that space together as well? So I'm fully on with that message. Thank you. Okay.
I love that. That's important because I'm a proponent of accountability from my family all the way to the students that I used to teach.
Come on now.
That's the only way that we can be accountable as a human society is starting with being accountable for ourselves.
That's exactly where it's at.
Yes.
Because I would say, y'all know, y'all are sick of me saying it, but culture changes before policy ever does. And so like, how do we continue to like hold ourselves to account and understand like in that moment, we all need to be able to get on one accord because at that point, like the community will be able to shift its ideals, which then we can translate into policy that will also be able to support us as best as possible. Yeah. Again, government's not the end all be all, but it is a tool that we can use. That's it.
It's a tool. And you said get on the same accord. Something that I heavily believe in is that accord already exists. And people just got to get right within. When we talk about frequency and we talk about love and everybody just being on the same page, listen, y'all, I need y'all to really listen. Tapping into yourself. Yep. Community starts with self.
Absolutely.
People think like community is just about going out and doing nice things, but it's also about being a good person. Like it starts there. And that's how you impact your environment, you impact your community. It's an interdependence that happens with one another, and it's a healthy relationship if you allow it to be.
Oh, I am fully with that. You were speaking to my core right now because I'm also like, I think people forget like your politic is sometimes an extension of how you treat those surrounding you, right? Yeah. And so I always kind of utilize my friend group as a way to think around how my politic formed. Okay. It's just like, oh, if one of us needs something, how do we tap into each other and help each other out? Cool. What does it mean for your best friend to fuck up and then you're still able to be like, but I love you. Yeah. Right? And it's okay. Like that's part of growth. Yeah. And so I had realized, especially within the last 2 years, like, my politic has always been formed around like human decency and like if I love you, I hold you to account because I believe you can grow, right? And so it's been interesting because I'm like, oh, this is why I have an abolitionist politic. Oh, this is why I believe in what I believe in. Oh, this is why, because people are still able to reckon the humanity within me. Yeah. But how do I extend the way that I treat my immediate circle into my neighbors and then to those that I impact even further? So that can be whether me as an educator or me within the neighborhood and being able to walk down the street and be like, oh, there goes Darren, there goes Mr. Jim, there's Miss Sheila, there's my favorite stoop nigga, there's Claudie, like here's all these people that are here, right? And it's always so interesting because my best friend Amanda, she always go, you just a neighborhood ass nigga. Like you walk outside and everybody just be like, hey Marquise, how you doing? Hey Teach. That was my name on the block, Teach. And so like for them, it was always like super dope because I think it is very true. Like get right within yourself, understand that you're able to, if you give yourself grace, it makes it easier to give others grace. Yeah. And you're able to build community in a different kind of way. Which then can like really mobilize in a much more impactful way, in my opinion. Yeah.
Definitely. And it's really just about the lens that you take as well, like allowing you to see things in others that are greater than yourself. You might not have that same experience or have had it, but it doesn't mean that you can't empathize with those people and then ask yourself, okay, is this decision, person, candidate, whatever, experience, is it bringing us closer to love? Right. Is it bringing us closer to progression? And I mean progression where it's like ethical and people are actually getting justice, and they're sustainable. So it's a big difference when we're talking about who's actually describing the solutions and creating them.
Ooh.
Or curating them.
That part. Okay, get into it. Okay, I see what you did there.
Yes.
No, oh man, and that is such a good way to kick off this episode. And if I'm going to keep it a bean.
Keep it a bean.
Oh, where am I at right now? Ooh, honestly, if I'm going to keep it a bean, Broccoli City got one of the best lineups happening out right now. I ain't going to hold, honestly. They had Meg last night. They got Victoria Monet now. And I'm just like, oh, y'all got like a fire lineup.
Yeah.
But I really got to give it sorry to the men. The women are holding it down in terms of live performances. Dang. Every single time.
Yeah.
And it's so sad because I look and I was like, Kendrick's entertaining. Like, he's a great live performer. He's one of my favorite live performers. Okay. But if I'm looking at the landscape right now, I'm like, Doechii is fun.
Yeah.
JT is fun. Victoria is fun. Meg has been fun. Like, women are dominating the conversation in music right now, which I think is also just like pivotal as we think around the year that we are entering into with this election cycle and what that means from a pop culture and a political lens. I think I like to intellectualize pop culture and some bullshit because I think it actually says a lot around where we're at as a society.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
These people be industry plants, and I'm not hating on black women. Like, don't get me wrong. Be the free, carefree, spirited, do your thing. But also understand the detriments that you have, like, on communities, even if you're not from them.
Right.
But the whole sexy red going into the schools, like,
Oop.
I just don't understand it. No shade, because
no shade at all.
If I'm in the club,
okay, it's not playing.
We're not gonna go there. But at the end of the day,
it's a duality.
Right time, right place.
Yeah, and honestly, it's funny. I just had this conversation the other week around, like, we need to have a conversation around Sexy Red in a way that's not like anti-black and laced in misogynoir. I said I don't bang with her because I don't like her politic. Yeah. Right? But you might. Now let that go up in the club. I'm out here. All right, I ain't even gonna hold. But I think it's also interesting because, like, having to hold the fact that, like, no, she is also the person. Though we can see her in the neighborhood, she's also somebody with a dangerous politic with a platform.
Exactly.
And that's important to, like, note the exact same way of, like, I can hold this truth around, like, you are familiar and you can serve as an inspiration to some kids because you have made it. And that's hard that we see a lot of our own people be able to make it, especially somebody who's not looked at as, like, prim and polished and all of this kind of stuff. And now you said some dumb shit, girl. We are not supporting Trump over here. I'm not.
Just saying, like, let's
two
really
things can exist at the same time.
Because if it's anybody, I'm not voting for it. It's not going to be Donald Trump.
Talk about it.
I'm just saying.
Clock it.
Let's start there. And I mean, technically, the community curator, we aren't going to be endorsing any presidential candidates as of right now. Like, and this is the first time that I'm actually publicly saying that. We haven't made a statement or anything.
Right.
Just simply because we don't agree with everybody's morals that are running, and so until public demands are met, I can't get behind anybody.
Say that again.
Yeah.
Because that's so important to note, right? Like, I think there has been such a space right now where everybody's just like, no, if you're abstaining your vote or telling us who you're not going to vote for, like, this is going to take away and this is going to signal this could be Trump, or hey, we need you to actually utilize your platform in a particular kind of way. But in reality right now, what we are missing is actually an informed opinion,
exactly,
an informed decision, right? And I'm like, no, we should actually be able to gather the facts, and there is value in being able to see, like, hey, what is preventing somebody from making this decision? What is actually motivating people? What are the actual needs and pain points of our community right now that we need to be able to demand as soon as we decide to talk about anybody?
Exactly.
And I love, like, the energy and the gusto of the first day of just like black women with Kamala, black men with Kamala, white dudes, white women, all of this. Love the energy. I love how that felt in that moment. I said, oh, it's giving real Obama era. Okay. Now, complication with that. 2020 hindsight. And it's also recognizing, like, the political climate is not only going to simply be led with identity politics. This political climate is not going to only be met with a simple justice lens. It's actually like, oh, no. People care about foreign policy because we see it so much more, and it is felt so much more,
and we're responsible for it. That part, when you recognize that, like, you're a tax-paying citizen in this country, and your decisions and your actions, like, have an effect on the people across the world. When you actually understand legislation, how laws are made, the people who it influences, it creates a different spectrum, honestly. And I think what you said is important, that people are misinformed and they also have a mistrust as well.
Yes.
And that's why I always represent, like, those people in the hood who, you know, I'm not going to say aren't going to vote, but oftentimes it's going to take them a little bit longer to get there and to understand. When they see somebody like Kamala Harris, got me trying to say it right. When they see somebody like her, vice president, sometimes for some people it's like a shining star. Like, this is my opportunity to be saved. All these things are going to be changed. But the reality of it is, it's still the same party, with the same intentions.
She's still part of Biden's
campaign. Literally. like,
what are we forgetting?
Exactly. So it's like, until those things are, spoken on, yeah, I'm cool. Like, yeah. It's really deep though. And this is not a do not vote post or, endorsement. Because you know who I endorse? I endorse the people of Philadelphia
every time to
get their lives together and to take care of their community and to take care of their families and just to do what feels and looks good. I was just down north the other day, yesterday, honestly, getting some pizza.
So good.
Period.
So good. Yes. I'm going there later this week. I'm so excited.
To. Shout out to the down north family.
Yes.
And right outside, that's what is that bus right there? The 54. I should know it because I'm from 33rd and Lehigh.
Come on now.
And there was this young brother that about to get on the bus or whatever. And right before he got on, he was eating a chocolate bar, but he dropped the wrapper on the ground. And the sunroof was open. So I really was so bad, wanted to say bro, we got to take care of our community, the trash can right behind you. But sometimes we even have that fear as well, being able to talk to each other because we don't know how that person is going to respond.
Yes.
And it's just if we can't get past that point of being able to communicate with each other, how are we expecting to solve problems together? If we can't communicate and hold each other accountable, and I say, you know what, bro, I see you about to get on the bus, I'll pick it up for you.
Yeah.
But the attitudinal shift of not even wanting to do that and to take care of my community, that has to happen first.
Yeah, and it's because you're touching on so much, because I think it's we're in a space right now, and I've been wrestling with it, but I'm the space that we are in is so imbued with American individualism, right? And it's this world is no longer functioning in a space of society and community and wanting to come together. It's actually functioning in a space of I gotta look out for me before I look out for anybody else. And so to me, I think it's scary because that's also it's a very unfamiliar environment for me. And I'm yo, how do you reckon this? Because I'm just I used to be able to go across the street, hey, can I get some sugar, please? Can I do this? But I also realized growing up in Reading, it was we had one high school. There was only 4 middle schools. So everybody knew everybody. We're all walking to the same place. Yeah. We all feel a need to take care of each other.
Yeah.
But we also realized neighbors got to look out for neighbors. We had the same crossing guard for all of my elementary school career, right? All of my siblings got to know them. The neighbors got to know us. We picked our friends up on the way. And I'm there is a space where communal accountability does not exist as much. Because of one, thinking around the landscape of Philly, everybody's traveling to different neighborhoods to go to school, so there's not necessarily a connection to the community, or at least a responsibility.
I don't want to cut you off, but there's a reason that happened. When we talk about the school closings in 2013,
talk about it.
I'm just saying. So there were 23 schools that were actually closed in the school district of Philadelphia. So as a result, a lot of these children that we see displaced today, even as young adults, they were told you have to travel across the city to go to a different school. You have to play on those same teams, and a lot of those schools had rivalry neighborhoods that did not agree with the neighborhood that they came from. So all of this beef that we're seeing today, a lot of it's systemic. Yes, it's connected to the music. Yes, it's connected to the drugging, but it's also connected to the way that we're displacing young Black people and students specifically in the city of Philadelphia.
Which for me, and this is okay, because there's so many lanes of things that you just touched on that I would love to hit on, but I would really love to even get your perspective on it, because there has been, for me, I've actually been leaning into educators a little bit more in terms of thinking around policy a little differently, than think about movements differently, because I think we have a very unique lens into how young people and families are impacted, because going to the school system, you're oh, you're going through it. Right? And so I've been thinking around this. Do you feel your space as an educator has also informed a lot of your politics, because we see things on a very different level, and 1,000%. We see where resources are not met? How's that impacted how you move?
1,000%. Everything that I do now has been impacted by the 2 years that I spent inside of the classroom. And I always say, at first I was going to do 1 year, but then I remember watching on Abbott University, I can't think of her name right now. I think it's Vera, but she was basically saying that, a real teacher comes back twice. They put in that extra year to correct their mistakes.
Wow.
So I was I can't not, do another year. Shout out to Quinta B also. She's really dope. But I can't not do another year. Like, these students are dependent on me. And so going back and just building connections with them and understanding their family dynamics, and also understanding that even though, my youngest students, I wasn't that much older than their parents. Right. So it's
that bugged me out when I first got into education.
When you take that in consideration, it's like, okay, listen, we all just trying to figure it out. But you see the disconnect between like the 90s babies, the 2000 babies.
Yes.
And it's like
disconnect.
The impact of technology, everything, and what these students, what they idolize.
Yeah.
And, they wanted to come out with the BBLs, and they're fantasizing over these things, and they're fascinated over the whippets and the perks. And it's like, that's not real life, and it's not sustainable. So every day, I try my best to really get that through to my students' heads.
Right.
And now, just being a social impact consultant, when we talk about youth, I'm always brought back to that time in that classroom.
Yeah.
And understanding, like, well, this child didn't even eat today, so the last thing they're about to think about is who they about to vote. Right. Okay, for like, even if they're not old enough, but they don't even understand the impact of these things because they have basic needs that aren't being met.
Right. And because that's exactly, you named it, right? Like, where are the basic needs that are being met for a student to be the best student that it can be, right?
Yeah.
And be able to function in a space. Because I think that is where the communal breakdown happens. It's just like, cool, if we look at the classroom as like a microcosm or an example of the rest of the world, cool. Why are these things happening? What is the disconnect? Why are people reacting the way that we're reacting, right? And so now you build it out and you're like, oh, if I didn't eat, why didn't they eat? Okay, this parent's working 2 jobs, so they're trying to figure this out. Oh, do they have access to a healthy food space, right? Do they have access to healthy food options as well? And so when you break it down, it really requires us to look at like, hey, what is the root cause of this issue, rather than like pointing fingers and blaming, hey, this symptom is annoying, this symptom is annoying. No, actually, there's a root of this thing that's happening. So there's data in the complaints.
Yeah.
And what happens when we ask why 4, 5, 6, 7 times? You'll get to the point of it. And now that's the hard part, because tackling the root means it takes more time to do it.
Exactly.
Because then we have to be forced to imagine something new.
Yeah. And
I think that's a space of this tension right now of like, we appreciate a more radical philosophy and politic. And also we have many bad faith actors who don't want to take time to actually sit with it and allow the results to be driven, right? Yeah. And so we're just like consistently like, no, here's what the impact will look like. But we also have to be honest around the time that it takes. We're trying to go up against a 400+ year system and having to unpack it and refurbish it, and then also be like, actually, this shit does not work at all. And so we're always met with that question of like, all right, well, what do we do next? Actually, we all need time as a community to really think around like, what does this look next? And you have to be okay with like, this might take 4 years for it to get done. It might take 8 years to get done. But that proof of concept will be there. But we're scared of something new because at least this thing has worked for us, or we can aspire for it to work for us.
Exactly, yeah. I think you said so much that I could reply to. But 2 things that I definitely take away from that is I stopped blaming Black people for the problems that they experience. Because we all know that there has been systemically, historically, an agenda against Black people, Indigenous people in this entire country, to keep them behind, to not know their worth, to not assume the same places as their ancestors who were the businessmen, who were building bridges, who were creating institutions, and still are. But it's also just about what we're choosing to tune into and amplify. And so that kind of leads to my second point of just also being mindful of what we consume, and then also utilizing arts and culture to articulate back to our people. Because as a culture, like, that's what gets us going. That's what we listen to. That's what unifies us. And so it's really about getting creative in the ways that we're trying to mobilize people and helping them to also understand their place in society and their worth. So yeah, just got to put that out there. Like, don't give up. It doesn't have to take long. Sometimes all it takes is for a song to go viral. I wrote a freestyle. I'm sorry.
Energy. Come on now.
I wrote a freestyle the other day. Like, it was on the, I'm not even going to say the beat yet because I don't know nobody to take it. But just know if I post it, that's just how I'm feeling, because I'm keeping it to me. Okay. Energy. So it's like, but that's sometimes you just have to do that. Like, you might be so fed up, or you just want to go record something. That doesn't make you necessarily like this big rapper, but you're utilizing your skills and also your talents, and also your abilities as well. You have a voice. You can talk. You can hear. That's a blessing and a privilege that some people also take for granted. Yeah. And so it's like utilizing those things and falling in love and, you know, creating harmony with everything that you're doing, everybody that you're interacting with, you can't go astray. You really can't. Like, at all.
Yo, you're speaking a word and a half. Before we started recording, I was like, yeah, I studied abroad and studied theater for social justice. But I truly, truly believe, like, for me, theater is the purest form of empathy, because you have to step into another character's shoes, whether good, bad, whatever we want to see them. But everybody's complicated. So even if you're playing like a bad character, well, what happened to you?
Right.
That's the question I would always ask if I played an antagonist. Well, how did I get here? Because I love a good anti-hero. I'm like, oh, how are we going to fuck this up today? But like, what drove you to that kind of politic, right? And it's so fascinating to me. So I love that you talked around the arts and culture piece, because I do think that informs a lot, especially as Black folks. We're griots. Like, we're storytellers at the end of the day. And so it's so important for us to keep that alive and understand the tradition, and also understand how we got here. And sometimes it gets so lost because so much of it is not written down. And if we're not asking our elders, like, hey, how do we get here? It's not a space that is going to be had more. So I do really believe, like, art and culture is such an important way to continue to drive imagination, but also reflect the conditions that we're in now.
And so to that point, to the niggas, this is one is for y'all. You have to get in community with people who look like you, who care about the same things as you, who find value in the importance of just being with people, and supporting one another. Because when you're in those spaces, you start to assume those emotions, and you learn more. You deepen your awareness and your understanding of things. And so if you're not listening to the low budget artists, you know, because of their message or because of the quality, whatever the case may be, you have to amplify those people. I say all the time that we are the algorithm. And also there's nothing artificial about this intelligence. So when you really tap into who you are and understand that you impact and you shift, and that you're the trend and you're the representation, you know, that's where it starts. Like, okay, I have to get behind the right people. And sometimes people just got to hear it like that, you know? So that's just really is. And it's like also utilizing different modalities, whether it be podcasts, videos, video games. That's why we need Black people in tech as well, you know, who are like working to appeal to young Black boys who are on the game, sometimes turn into adults with the same addictions. Like, these are real. So if you have the capability to, you know, be in tech or to play a game, you have the same capabilities of understanding coding and understanding how to program your life.
All right. So something I appreciate that you were able to name was a tech piece, right? And how we have to get involved in that, and like saying we're the algorithm. I love that so much. More particularly because, like, for me, my day-to-day is actually getting Black and brown children particularly into STEM, right? And so how do I also get ahead of that and really have it make sense of it all? And so I appreciate the fact that you were like, no, we need to actually be at the face of innovation. We actually need to be at the space of, no, these tech companies are not keeping us in mind as we do this work. And so getting younger and younger at bats with, like, here's what you can do in tech, here's what you can do with STEM, here's what you can do with video games. That's so important, because this is, the data shows even, like, hey, what are you playing right now? How are you consuming this? And how is this actually reflecting in your real life too? And that to me is so fascinating, because sometimes we overlook the gaming stuff, right? Because it's also met with, like, what white people used to say, like, oh, this rap music is terrible for everybody and blah, blah, blah. And so I think we also have a complicated nature with it, because we're like, no, music definitely influences. Like, if classical music can calm me down and is good for studying, other music can also do things for us, right? If I'm in a minor chord, I'm sad, right?
Yes, exactly.
And so understanding the mechanisms of that all. And so I appreciate you for naming the piece around STEM and particularly tech and what that means. But now it makes me want to transition into the space of the work that you do on a day-to-day basis. Like, and I love the work that you do. Like, sitting here, I was doing my Googles, y'all. I was studying.
Thank you. Oh.
But talk around the community curator and really talk around how you became a social impact strategist. Where did that start?
Keep it in the bean.
Come on now.
Let me, because I'm working on changing my narrative, and not that the story changes, but how I actually articulate my story. So whenever I would record, I would often say, like, I came from poverty, and it's the truth. And more people need to have that conversation and lead with that, because it's not everybody's realities.
Right.
But this entire country is built on the backbone of those people, the working class people, the people who are servicing, whether it be at Rite Aid, and this is no endorsement for any companies, whether it be, you know, wherever, the corner store, like, you know, well, not necessarily the corner store, because we need to start having our own businesses inside of our own neighborhoods. But in general, just when we think about the working class generation, going back to that agenda that's just been against Black people for so long, is not by a mistake. It's by design. And I was one of those people who were a part of that reality. And so, like I said, being from 33rd and Lehigh, Strawberry Mansion, although I loosely say I came from poverty, the reality of it is, even though I had both of my parents in my life, they still made less than a certain amount, which was considered the poverty line. I think back then, when we first started, it was like 17. I think it's at 22,000 now. Philadelphia is still the largest poorest city in the entire country. And there's many people who live here and do not even know that. So being a product of this story and this reality, I really just was inspired to want to relieve my neighbors, my community, and even my family of some of the issues that, you know, we experience. And it wasn't even that when you're in poverty, you really understand that you're impoverished, if that makes sense. Like, you don't necessarily feel poor, because one thing poor people know how to do, they know family.
Okay, and we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it stretch. Okay,
we're gonna make it work. But I had the opportunity to go to college, and when I realized that there's like different classes of Black people, and then just different, not races, but, you know, realities of the people that are, you know, in these races and with their experiences, there's similarities that Black people don't get to experience. They don't get to experience the luxury of going on vacation at all times, you know, or being able to, there's Black kids here who's never been in New York, you know, never been on an airplane, never been to the beach. Like literally, this is real.
I took my kids to Boston. Nice. And it was such a dope and humbling experience, because part of it is like that opportunity gap, right? And like, it changes when you get to see something more than your neighborhood.
Exactly.
But for my students to go, and I took 40 kids up there, and we stayed for 3 days, and for them, they were like, yo, they don't have turkey bacon? Simple shit, right? But it's like, they had to realize, like, in Philly, they had such a unique experience of it being like, it feels Black, it is Black. I see myself represented in schools and everything. But then not on top of that, also it's Muslim, right? And so they're so used to that. But when you went up to Boston, they said, white and Christian. They don't have us in mind in this kind of space, right? And to me, I was like, this was that moment that I had when I studied abroad. This was that moment I had when I left Reading and was like, there's rich people that exist and they live like this regularly. They know where to work your way in on the forks and the spoons and etiquette. And I said, I don't know this world. What is this? And so I love that you named that and framed it that way too. Sorry.
No, you're fine. It's important. And just also understanding that culture shock in itself makes you realize that in that same amount of getting exposure to all these different cultures and people, at the same time, there's a demographic of people who are constantly overlooked for a reason, and not given access, adequate resources, education, health, whatever, you name it, for a reason. There are the number of Black men who are incarcerated for a reason. Like, so when understanding that, okay, these are the things that are happening to my people, how do I become accountable for them? Honestly, like, I thought that I was going to be a nurse. I didn't know and I really wanted to be a farmer when I was younger.
Really?
Yeah. I also wanted to be Bob the Builder, but that's a different story.
You know, Bobby, showy out here.
But it's like, I technically felt like I still am doing that because I'm building community and I'm helping things to grow. I'm like, you know, planting seeds. So it's all still there in the vision. But at the end of the day, understanding like, okay, I can get in control of this narrative and I can just create those avenues, create those vessels, and help people, you know, to see them best selves so they can thrive, so their families can thrive. So that's really how the Community Curator came about. I just realized that something I need to mention is that I've always been a part of community. So the other side of the story of growing up in poverty was that part of the reason why I didn't feel it is because my mom, my dad kept me engaged. So I started off in Freedom Theater when I was like 3 or 4 years old. I did ballet, tap. Then I was a Girl Scout with E9 Baptist Church for like 3-4 years. Wow. And then after that, I started to do karate. And then I was at art classes at the Philadelphia University for Arts. Like, my mom kept me engaged. Like, so it never felt like it. And then after that, I joined Freedom Schools. And that's when I learned servant leadership. social justice, Sankofa, Black people, Afrocentrism. I was like, oh, this is what I've been missing. Like, this is the missing piece. So once I got that exposure, it was up. I was at the marches. You know, I've been to DC marches, like really just getting an understanding of advocacy and like, oh, there's people who really care and they're making noise and like they're unifying against these problems together. Those are my people. Where else would I be?
Right.
You know, it's not about the amount of money that's in my pocket or the clothes that people may wear. At the end of the day, it's about who you're aligning yourself with, because all that really don't matter. And now I'm at the point where I am kind of making money and I'm like, I don't even want all this. Like, I don't. Like, I'm still the regular same person now with more awareness, more heightened, like, understanding of who I am and how I can educate my people. And one other thing I just really want to point out, and I feel like this is the perfect platform to do that, is that when holding people accountable, also understanding that people can change, people can grow, and people can become educated. So it's not for us to cancel each other. I hate when people talk so bad about our ancestors, like Rosa Parks. All she did was sit down. She didn't really do nothing. Listen, these are people who were losing sleep, families not being protected. You know, they were giving their lives up every single day. I think about Dr. Martin Luther King. You know, one of the last things that he said was, I led my people into a burning house. But we know that that man did the best that he could.
With what he had.
With what he had. Then when he realized that, you know, things were being psyoped and he, you know, the movement was being controlled, that's for us to pick it up. Pick up the baton, okay? Like, that's when we keep it going. Now that we have this information of what happened to, whether it be the Black Panther movement, SNCC, how are we continuing the legacies?
Every time.
But people want to argue on Twitter about who's Black and what's Black.
Right.
Wasting time.
Child, that happened to me the other day, sitting in a meeting full of Black men and just discussing, like, what does a political party with Black men at the center of it look like, right? And it was so interesting to me because there was so much where I was like, oh, we have to our politic also stems from our masculinity and our relationship to it. And I was just like, dog, like, you're thinking in a very individualist nature. You're thinking this way. And I was sitting there, I was just like, I said, now if I'm keeping it a bean, we cannot have a political party that centers Black men and has Black men at the forefront because we haven't reckoned our own relationship to our own masculinity and what that looks like. And I said, that's not taking away from the potential of us to be able to navigate in these spaces, but we have to be able to look at our shit and be like, hey, how have we also participated in harming our own community?
Exactly.
Right? And I think about it more complicated like that because I'm like, we look at community as a maternal thing, as a feminine thing. We don't look at community as like a both and situation. Like, we need to all be within it. But it particularly, this philosophy for me came from visiting the Philly prisons. And so sitting with the kids, and I'm like, dog, it was another Black man that put this gun in your hand. This was the pressure you had from an older Black person that you trusted, right? And so for me, I'm looking at it, I'm just like, we need to also be honest around how we see each other, how we see ourselves, but also we have to reckon our relationship to our own masculine identity and what we believe patriarchy should do for us versus like the reality of like, no, as niggas, we don't operate in the same way. Like, Black women are making more money than Black men, right? There's also the reality of like, we don't live in this nuclear family kind of home, right? We're in a multi-generational household. So our existence and how we move in spaces, whether it's by systematic oppression or just by design, right? We don't live the typical life that we're sold, right?
Exactly.
We have to live and understand, like, hey, economically, the Black woman may make more, right? But also understanding, like, you're also going through your own set of issues as well. Also recognizing for us, we're dealing with systematic issues from mass incarceration and all that good stuff. And so living in this world, it is being able to recognize, how do you also experience the interpersonal violence that may be happening? And then also recognizing there's systematic violence that feels like it's much more apparent on Black men as well. And I think it's hard for us to recognize, but I'm like, the politic of love is one of the most difficult things, as Baldwin always says, is because I still have to be able to see your humanity and I still have to be able to look at you and be like, I fucked up, but how can we be better? And that is such a hard politic to go because it's so melded in with like human emotion and like, you hurt me and somebody needs to be blamed and this needs to be punitive and this needs to happen versus like, how do we get here? What happened to you? And what do you need for us to make it better? And that's hard.
And to that point, I would like to raise just even bell hooks, right? And we think about all about love and just how Black people love in general. Not that I don't think that a Black man-led entity would not be successful or have a divine impact.
Awesome.
with the right people in the right rooms.
That part.
But I also feel
no
like
incels. You other niggas with podcasts. I'm worried about you.
Traditionally, when we think about Black families, even if they aren't the nuclear type, but just Black culture, it really is holistic.
Oh, yes.
And that's why you need Black women just as much as you need Black men, and you need Black men just as much as you need Black women. Okay, and protect Black women
every time.
I just want to take a moment of silence for Sonia Massey, as well. I have to speak her name in this very moment, because when we don't get behind our Black woman, that's the realities of what happened. When we don't protect our Black woman, we are all fighting against the same system, whether it's police, understanding the food that's attacking our families and our bodies, and we're feeding them to our young people. There is literally a warfare on Black people, and if you haven't realized that by now, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. No. So it's at the end of the day, the conversations are so important, but I like when people get to the point of understanding, community, I need you as much as you need me. Ubuntu. I am because you are, literally. That is the end all be all. So once we get to that point, all the arguments don't matter.
Right.
And that's why, honestly, I don't be on LinkedIn because I'm LinkedIn. I just really be for real. I don't be having time to tell you about my work. You trying to get involved or not.
Right.
At the end of the day.
Right.
Because I'm making it happen. I don't got time to politic with you and argue with you on Twitter because I'm in the community.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I'm tired. And I probably shouldn't even be scrolling right now. So at the end of the day, it's just what are we really talking about?
Right.
And the only other thing I really want to say is just going back to the being patient with each other, because again, everybody has had their own experience and understanding of things, but we have to relearn each other.
Yeah.
And that's how we relearn community and what it means and how we can move forward with this.
Right.
Because it kind of disheartens me sometimes when I see certain movements that don't agree with one another, even though I might agree or want to support them.
Right.
Such as Palestine, free Palestine, right? Thinking about some of the struggles of our Palestinian brothers and sisters and how they have been and still are related to the struggles of Black people in America. But when you see the disorganization that may be present, or when people want to argue, well, they never cared about Black people, we're literally fighting the same people that are manufacturing the bullets for Palestine, are manufacturing the bullets that are killing your brother and sister in this very city. There's no other way to say it.
Right.
So it's when you understand that, it's oh.
And I always go back. It's Malcolm X. He talked around, we have to also save our brothers and sisters in Palestine, right?
Yes.
It's so important because what they're doing over there, like you said, is happening to us. Whatever they're doing abroad over there, it's going to come back to us.
Yeah.
It's going to always happen. And so, what happens when... it's funny because it takes me back to George Floyd. I was the world rallied around Black America. The world rallied around Black America. And for us not to extend that same kind of grace, for the fact that it was Palestinian people who were telling us, hey, here's how you here's how you guard yourself from gas and the whatchamacallit. Why am I bugging?
The rubber bullets
and all that. Tear gas. There we go. I'm dog, they're giving us strategies because it's happening to them. We're taking from their blueprint as well. And so it's so important to always note, our struggle, it's interconnected on a much global lens, and we can talk around Pan-Africanism. We can talk around having in the Black radical tradition. We need to extend to a global politic.
Yeah,
we need to be able to understand how do we participate in other people's oppression, especially it's difficult. I think it's interesting the time we're in right now, of it being an election year, the Olympics. And what does it mean to be a Black person who is representing this country at the highest degree?
Yeah.
And it's difficult because it's we get to participate in this country. We don't get all the fruits of the labor of this country. And at the same time, we're talking around an imperialist state.
Yeah.
And what is that complicated nature of just being let's represent this and do the thing that we are hella good at, and recognize on the backs of it is that American flag that we have our own relationship with that does not service us.
Yeah.
So I've been reckoning with it for a little bit. I'm working on a piece about it, but I'm it's an interesting time for us as Black folks and what it means with a potential for a Kamala Harris presidency as a Black woman, as the Olympics are this year, and what that means for us and our own ideas around nationalism, but also as Black people who are leading the space. We had Coco and LeBron carrying the torch, the flag, and that means something.
Yeah.
But does that necessarily mean anything to us on the ground?
That's what I was about to say. My response is, don't watch football this year. Don't watch basketball this year. Like, pay attention to where and when Black people are allowed to speak, when you're invited to those spaces. I saw something on Twitter that was basically saying, like, how we're still celebrating the first. I'm the first this, I'm the first that, but it really is a representation of all the people who weren't able to get that same opportunity. You really want to shut it down? You really want to mobilize? You really want to organize? Turn your television off. Stop watching the NFL, literally, because that's where they're getting their money. All, like, it's affecting the market. It's being able to influence these same channels.
But I want escapism.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Listen.
Right?
And it's not saying don't enjoy yourself, don't, find joy in certain things, but it's just so tied to consumerism that we sometimes don't even care. We don't even care about the effects that it has on our people. Like, it feels good. Oh, but that's my favorite player. And da-da-da. Doesn't matter.
Right.
At the end of the day, what are they really, really, really doing for your community? And I've been to an actual game. And when I realized, oh, this is different than on TV. They were promoting prisoners. What is it? The wardens? Like, they were advertising jobs for wardens.
Oh, yeah.
And then they had the dogs competing with one another. What does that say to you about Black people in this field, in this industry? As
I don't watch
athlete?
the sport, so I don't be knowing. But like, we out here.
Listen, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I'm just saying, go to a game and see what it's really like without the television. It's one big show. It's entertainment. Everything is magnified on television and the oohs and the eyes, but really, you got to watch what you consume and watch what the agenda is, for your people. So that's all I really got to say, because we could go on all day.
Truly, but I appreciate, I really appreciate you being on this platform. I love the voice that you brought into the space as well. Like, it's so dope, and it's so refreshing to be in community with so many folks who are like doing the work and understanding what it means to do the work day to day and not just have those quick viral moments as well.
Yes.
And like hearing your work and hearing your philosophy, I'm just like, where the hell have you been? Where have I been?
Listen,
yeah,
you've been down.
So
what's up?
Truly and honestly, so I appreciate you coming on to the show. Please let the people know where they can find you, and if you have any parting words, please, this is the space.
Absolutely. So I would like to announce for the first time ever,
exclusive.
yes, exclusive. The community curator. Oh, I can't mess up my whole name. The community curator will be celebrating Black Philanthropy Month next month in August, and so this is opportunity really to invest in Black communities, Black families, and also Black organizations that was started in 2011 is now being monitored under the WISE Fund, which is Women Invested in Saving Earth. And so, yes, it's a collective of women who are basically, they keep the legacy going of Black Philanthropy Month every single year. And this year in Philadelphia, we're going to be giving away a $1,000 grant.
Come on.
Yes, so $500 will be cash, and then we're also going to give away $500 in kind services. So whatever service you want us to do, $500 worth, we'll do it for you for free. If you're given, obviously, the opportunity to receive the grant. We're also working on our methodology for a new prototype, which is your philanthropic footprint. It's not something that
that is dope.
has really been studied. We think about our environmental footprint. Do I leave my water on when I brush my teeth? Do I turn my lights off? You can apply that same concept to how involved you are in your community. So how many organizations did I give to this month? How much volunteer hours did I put in this month? So we're working on that model. That's going to be a part of the challenge. And the last thing that I want to share is we're also working on a grassroots group chat.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be powered through Mighty Networks. And this is an opportunity for grassroots leaders to connect off of social media without the noise.
That is a game
with each other.
changer.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. So we have an anti-gun violence chat on there, a channel on there. We have a volunteer circle, so you could just pop in and ask, who could pull up. It's already been proven to work. We've already put people in places. We also have a grant channel too.
Yeah.
So you could just come in once you subscribe. You get all the grants that we have. And then we have an event chat as well. And so all of these things are launching, and you can follow us at the Community Curator on all social media platforms. We're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, we're on TikTok, and then our website as well. So, come vibe with us, come have a conversation, come get involved, come volunteer. And so that's where you can find us. But overall, Marquise, I just want to say to you, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's definitely been a blessing to connect. Yeah. And I want to say that you are a man of your word. Like, as soon as Ryan, made that pass, whatever, I don't know basketball, whatever.
It's all
but
good.
It's in.
It's the alley-oop.
It's in today. We made it in.
Okay.
All buckets made. Yeah. And so I'm just so happy. And let's continue this curationship, and keep it going, because I love being aligned in a community with good people, with good hearts.
Okay, same. Thank you so
thank
much.
You.
I'm so happy. I'm so excited for like my base to be able to get to know who you are. I know my students are following, fellow educators, activists as well. So please, I'm leaving all of Darrien's information within the description box below. Please make sure you tap in. Please make sure you share. Please make sure you follow. Thank you so much. I see you. I appreciate you. I value you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Other than that, make sure that you subscribe to Marquise Davon Productions on YouTube. There you can get all of the podcasts as well. But if I'm your favorite Monday morning drive as well, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to listen in on the conversation. Thank you.